Okay, good morning and welcome to Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon, or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as, no big deal. I've heard it all before, and in a good way, I don't care. So, coming on for day 63, is it? Oh my gosh, we're not that far in. Hold on. We are Thursday 61. 61 of my one video each day, 365-day campaign raising money from people big and tall, short and small, or people whose bank accounts are big and tall or short and small, to make up for a life stolen, which began in 2011. I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment by an orchestrated series of events, which I was able to write about in my book, Duplicity and Duress, That Factory is the Making, 6 years after everything started. And in a way, I was so driven to hurry up and do stuff while walking dogs around the city. Okay. So it's not like I had all kinds of cush experiences. I was frantic, constant OCD, PTSD. And if people saw me on the street, I would snap out at times because of how moronic people love to be out there on purpose. Not because they're desperate or what have you. So anyway, because I was exposed so much to being outdoors, I just want to add, and to having this experience of being made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment, my brain is in a whole different place, and it's hard to function like a normal person. Even normal people can't stand going to work because they want to slap the biatch next. But point being, it's hard to operate like a normal person. So I have to keep finding work that allows me to just do this here, do this there, but I have no life. I keep a roof over my head. That's about it. I eat and keep a roof over my head. I have barely any family, and they have their own lives. I don't take vacations, haven't had any in a million years. I don't even know when I've been on a vacation, to be honest. So all the benefits that come with working like a normal person. So anyway, but if that weren't enough, me being made to believe that I'd be murdered in my apartment, the games commenced after that. And every time I turned to talk to someone, I reached out to 1 million people who were on my contact list, whether I knew them really well after having spent the years leading up to the kickoff, getting to know them, or them getting to know me a little too much, and what would work. Because I do believe I was set up by about 90% of the people who I was mingling with or socializing with or networking with in hopes of finding a better life, because that's part of how it works. But I do believe these people wove themselves into my life, and every time I turned to them, they behaved in ways that were unsupportive as opposed to supportive. So normally when you're hurting or desperate, or if your daughter rolls up on your curb, and you know there's no trouble, no major problem, it's the first time ever this person has ever been in a desperate situation. But if someone is hurt, beat up, and everything else, if she rolls up on your curb, would you want your daughter shunned or have the door slammed in her face, begging for help? That's what happened here in Philadelphia. And to be as nice as possible, I wound up sending out GoFundMe links to kind of explain this. By the time I went through years and years of a cat and mouse game, which ensued in this city, after turning to people I thought would maybe at least try to help me understand what happened, or would try to say, we're moving to Portland, Oregon. If you want to move there, we'd be willing to we can all hang out, and maybe you can find a job there and start a new life and just leave Philadelphia forever. Nobody said that. In fact, it was the opposite. Oh my God, Sharon must be crazy. Can you imagine if your daughter rolled up, or your partner who was just slaughtered and raped? Oh my God, she must be crazy. Blaming the victim was a big problem here in the most liberal city, one of the most liberal cities in America. And yet they preach against that here. So somebody is not doing what they say they're doing. Or somebody is not walking the walk or talking the talk. They just pretend to be liberal here. So anyway, point being, can you imagine if your wife or daughter or your mom, and I use women only because it's a more sensitive thing, when you're on the Titanic, technically the guys let the women jump into the dinghies first, the women and children. We have the opposite happening, except for in one or two cases of people who actually don't have a lot of money. We have people with money, and it shows. And they slam the doors, or they turn a blind eye, or they're somehow it falls on deaf ears. So for the first time in 40 years, Sharon seems to be in a crisis. And everyone assumes, oh, well, she must be on drugs. My assumption was, do they think I turned to drugs or something? Is this why there's been no one responding? So anyway, point being, I am seeking people who understand what happened here and to think about, what if your daughter were totally abandoned, or both your daughters were pulled into the muck by the darkest of the dark, trying to seek out the most vulnerable? Because my sister and myself and my mom were vulnerable, period. Our dad married somebody else, left for someone else, and he was in the picture a little, but not a lot. And everybody gathered up to the table for a feast. What would you do if your daughter were all of a sudden on the street and it was no fault of her own? Just let her sit there? So anyway, just something to think about. I had all kinds of crazy things happening. It was a cat and mouse game. I was amped up to like 8,000, miles per hour, running around the city, trying to walk dogs that were located all over the city, not in a cute little area, nice little cush job of all my dogs are right here in a 5-block radius. No, I was all over the city, riding my bike, walking. I had so many bike accidents, and I see that as part of it. And I'll bring up an example that I wound up walking. One example is my bike. When I rode it for even after everything started, I still had to ride my bike, walk dogs. I didn't know how else to pay my bills. I was kind of trapped in dog walking. I tried to get jobs other places. They didn't pan out. So I kind of gave up and just went with, well, the universe keeps giving me dog walks. I'll just keep going. It's like a ride, but not a great one. So having to ride my bike, lock, unlock, right, lock, unlock, lock, all over the place. So I locked my bike over by Ocean Prime. I don't live too far away from Ocean Prime, but I walked a dog in the Grand building where there's a roost in there, and then there's some apartments across from Dos Tacos over here on, I guess it's, 15th. So I come out from finishing up with a dog there, and someone had parked their bike. And this is always a biker's nightmare. Like, please say this person did not lock their kryptonite around my bike. Walk up to the bike, and it's like, but oddly, someone worked hard to get the kryptonite bike, and you had to squeeze to do this, to get it around the bracket, which was attached to the bike I was using. By the way, the bike that I had wound up stolen. So I had a nice bike, it wound up stolen. Somebody gave me an extra bike, which is more like a delivery rally kind of a bike, but I would take whatever I needed to get around on my dog walk. So that's another story. And that has to do with an overnight, and somebody had all their stuff locked up by the railing outside, and they had a difficult row home situation where you couldn't, if you brought in your bike, you would have to like take it all the way up the stairs. They had a little tiny foyer. So it's like, I guess I'll leave it locked out here because they have so many belongings out here that I'm sure it's safe. It's kind of a safe street. It's over there by Sega Run, Rodman, where all the flags are. So anyway, sure enough, headed out that time, was heading down the stairs, and because I did an overnight for these people and for dog sitting. And as I walked down the stairs, almost like the universe told me in advance that my bike had been stolen. That's what I mean. You know how you get those thoughts and you're like, I kind of knew somebody wanted you to know something. Your brain might as well be a phone and you just got a text message. I knew in advance, so I was already prepared, like, oh, is my bike stolen? And sure enough, it was. So anyway, this is a different bike by Ocean Prime. Somebody wiggled their kryptonite lock around their bike, around the U-shaped stand or whatever it is, and around and included my bike, the rack on the back of my bike. I needed to be to 10 other dog walks, and one of them happened to be way, 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 way down in South Philly. So it's walkable or taxiable, except I was so worried about money, I didn't want to pay a taxi. And back then they didn't have Ubers. Like this was pre big time Uber. So it was like taxis were about it. And I remember thinking, well, like it did come to me, maybe if I can remove the bike rack, I at least stand a chance of getting the bike to escape. So sure enough, I was like, if I had tools, I could unscrew the bike rack, lift it up out off of the kryptonite lock of this other person who had to work hard to fidget that lock around. Went into the ground or whatever it is there, and a woman there who, super nice lady, whose name is Leslie, Leslie Gay. So break down that word really quick, and you got Les, Lie, and Gay. That's how bad it is in Philly. I think that she's super nice, and I think that's her actual birth name. But it starts to get weird when you see the world a certain way. So I actually really love her. She's one of the most respectful people in Philly. There are very few. So technically, so I was like, do you guys by any chance have tools? Because my bike got hooked up to someone else's bike, and I'm trying to figure out if I can undo a piece of what's on the frame of my bike to get. So she's like, I think we do have tools. She gave me tools. I go out there. The screws are really tight, and I'm working on a clock because I have to get to the next dog, then 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 to the next dog. And another thing that was sent was, and get this, because it's Leslie Gay, and I had gone for the LGBT community, gets even better. The little voice up there is like, it'll take you too long because the screws are so tight. Just ask a man. Just ask a man to help you. Ask a man to help you. Ask a man to help you. Ask a guy to help you. There are good guys out there. There are good guys out there. That's the message. So meanwhile, it wasn't funny. Like I was scared because I knew I had a job to do and I was worried. And some people have alarms, so they know when I clock into their house and when I clock out. It's not like there's a lot of freedom of motion with every client. And there is this thing of like, I could tell some people you feel comfortable saying, oh my God, I'm running late because my bike. But there's too much going on every day, constantly, every second of every day, that it's just like, I didn't want to have to do that. So I had to sort of acquiesce. But I did discover there was a really nice guy walking by Ocean Prime over here. And he, in fact, was able to unscrew the bike rack, and I could slip the bike rack off of the lock, of the kryptonite lock, and was able to free my bike from being locked in front of Ocean Prime. And then made my way down to the dog walk. And by then I was hot and so tired. I returned the tools to Leslie Gay over at the Grand Building, and get all the way down to like Dickinson and where there's a park down there on Dickinson, 3rd, Tasker, all down there, wherever that is. And I decided, you know what? I'm so exhausted. I'm so frustrated. I'm so tired, because that would have been about the 10th thing that happened already that day. It's not just one thing. That would have been number 10 on the list of, if I could have reported to someone who cared, because the police here, they deal with regular basic street crime. I don't really know what they do, to be honest. So here's a list for you. Okay, and today we had kind of a major one with a bike, but compared to something that happened later, and then this, 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 and then showing up at another client's house, and I did get a call from the one. So when I walked the dog, after freeing my bike from being trapped, I was like, you know what? I'm so exhausted. I'm going to kind of shortchange these people today, but just get the dog out, see if he pees and poops, and bring him back in. So it was like, instead of 30 minutes, it was like 20. And technically dog walkers, if they're short on time, they kind of do this. You start to realize what humans can actually accomplish in a day. And people who know better are like, you know what? Sometimes she even walks my dog longer, so just cut her a break today. Nope, get a phone call. Oh, I'm just curious. This is an Ivy League school person. I'm just curious. It seems like you walk the dog shorter today. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I had an incident with my bike and blah, blah, blah. So I was able to explain it, but it's just like, come on, one day. And where are you located? And she knows that most of my dog walks are up here. So I kind of wonder if she was part of the gang stalking squad. And she knew I'd be desperate and would say yes to any job, which meant, and who else wants to go all the way down to this corner of Southeast Philly to walk dogs? Not many. So anyway, in addition to that, I would show up at another client's house. And this is sort of, I'm abbreviating here. This is on a different day, but it's another example. Another client's house. And I would walk in, and these would be clients who were actually moving to Portland, and they were there to visit. And there were a partner, Steph and Meg. And Steph had already flown out. Meg was going to fly the next day. And there's a whole thing of me staying overnight in between them having to go here, there, and everywhere. So Meg came back to the house after being at home in Bethlehem, and then was going to fly out to Portland. And I was doing overnights for their dogs. And I come back to the house knowing that Meg finally left and I could return again. And pictures, and they had left a gift for me. And I left the gift up on the counter, which included, like, say, Toblerone chocolate or something like that. She had thrown out the gift in the trash and then flipped all the picture frames backwards against the wall. Because I walked in and I was like, something's different here. Oh, everything's turned around and facing the wall. That's gaslighting and a crazy-making tactic. And then I'm looking for my gift, and my heart sunk. These people often made my heart sink because I thought they were friends, and then they would do things that messed me up, unless she was incredibly jealous, but I didn't think I was that hot of a girl. Anyway, so point being, then I would have to go through another communication thing of, hey, Steph, the gift you left me, it's now in the trash. Did Meg mean to do that? Or what was the point? So it became a whole thing of, oh, well, she probably thought the dogs would have gotten the chocolate, even though they were way back on the counter and technically unreachable. And if she thought they were reachable, then just stick them in a cabinet, not in the trash. Sticking something in the trash, a gift that you give someone, is hurtful. This woman is an extremely abusive person, Meg. And I actually I believe she was the roommate of someone who was shot from Starbucks for his iPod Shuffle. I want to know who these people are and why they circled around me. And I want to know how real the story is, and I want to know what people are capable of doing. So anyway, that's it. A lot of stuff I tried to get out here really quick. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place with trying to describe stories. There are so many things to talk about that happened. Like, technically, 30 times a day, PTSD would have been aggravated every day for 7 years. And when the first initial incident occurred, the incident that made me believe I'd be murdered in my apartment, my hypervigilance, whatever you call it, my senses were heightened so badly that if, the refrigerator kicked off, the engine, it sounded like a freight train was coming through the apartment. I could hear 5 miles away. It was, it's like watching a movie unfold in Philadelphia. Anyway, it's just like being behind the curtain and watching everyone else walking around. It's hard to explain. But so happy this many years later to at least be here, to have a roof over my head. But will I ever get to have a life of love and, normal stuff like a home? I come from a world where people kind of had homes, and, my mom was a single parent, so she sort of had to work as best as she could. But I come from a world where people normally have a house and a car, and they take, like, vacations and stuff. So anyway, that's it. I'll just wind it down there. Kind of hard to get through everything I wanted to talk about. But if your daughter were tortured and kicked out of an apartment or what have you through no fault of her own, and all kinds of other things are going on, and she rolls up on your doorstep, would you slam the door in her face? And I'm sad to say, there are times when it's like, I wish these people could experience what I experienced, and then that way they'll finally get it. But it's incredibly hard to arrange for people to experience this type of stuff. Okay, have a great day. Hope your life doesn't get arranged too much. Unless it's to like a sugar daddy and you get to have all your bills paid for.